They say the moment before you disappear is when you become most visible. Standing in that backyard, watching my mother's lips curl into that familiar sneer as she delivered words meant to destroy me, I realized I had been invisible my entire life. What she didn't know was that her cruelty had just given birth to something far more powerful than the daughter she thought she knew. The morning of the company anniversary barbecue started like every other day in the Reed household. I was up at 5:30, preparing the marinade for the premium cuts of meat I'd driven 40 minutes to get from the specialty butcher. The sun hadn't even broken the horizon, but I was already arranging fresh flowers in crystal vases, each arrangement carefully designed to complement the color scheme I'd chosen for the event. This wasn't just any barbecue. This was the 30th anniversary of my father Richard's investment firm, and nearly 200 of the city's most influential people would be attending. I had spent 3 weeks planning every detail. The caterers I'd hired were merely support. I insisted on preparing the main courses myself because I knew my mother Eleanor would find fault with anything less than perfection. The decorations weren't store-bought either. I'd handcrafted centerpieces using gold leaf and fresh orchids, created a photo timeline of the company's history that would be displayed on custom-built easels, and even arranged for a string quartet to provide ambient music during cocktail hour. My brother Marcus wandered into the kitchen around 9, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up at odd angles. He grabbed a piece of bacon I'd been preparing for the quiche and shoved it in his mouth without asking. "Event's not till 2, right?" He mumbled through his food. "Make sure my blue suit is pressed. The one from Armani, not the cheaper one." I didn't bother telling him I'd already pressed it, along with 2 backup options, and had them hanging in his closet since yesterday. He wouldn't notice anyway. Marcus never noticed anything I did unless it wasn't done. Savannah appeared an hour later, perfectly coiffed even at 10 in the morning, her silk robe flowing behind her like she was walking a runway. Time equals zero point 0.4 seconds. "Evelyn, I need you to call the florist and add white roses to the arrangements. The red is too aggressive." She didn't wait for my response, just grabbed her green juice from the refrigerator, the one I'd made fresh that morning, and glided back upstairs. The white roses she wanted would clash with everything I'd already designed. But I made the call anyway, paying the rush delivery fee out of my own pocket because I knew she'd complain to Mother if I didn't comply. It was always like this. Every family event, every holiday, every celebration became my responsibility, while they took credit for the success or blamed me for any perceived failure. By noon, the backyard had been transformed into something from a magazine spread. Twinkling lights were strung between the trees, creating a canopy of stars even in daylight. The tables were draped in cream-colored linens with gold runners, each place setting featuring china I'd spent hours polishing. The bar was stocked with top-shelf liquors and wines I'd selected based on what I knew each major guest preferred. I'd even created personalized cocktails named after company milestones. Father finally emerged from his study around 1, surveying the setup with his typical detached assessment. "Looks adequate," he said, which from Richard Reed was practically a standing ovation. He adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous habit he'd developed over the years. "Your mother will want to review everything before guests arrive." Eleanor descended the stairs at 1:30, like royalty gracing peasants with her presence. She wore a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, her jewelry catching the light with every movement. She walked through the backyard, examining every detail with the critical eye of someone looking for failure. "The ice sculpture is too small," she declared, though it stood nearly 4 feet tall. "And why are the cocktail napkins ivory instead of pearl?" The napkins were pearl. I'd specifically ordered pearl because she'd mentioned it 3 times, but arguing would only make things worse. "I'll have them changed immediately," said, knowing I had no backup napkins and nowhere to get them with 30 minutes until guest arrival. She waved her hand dismissively. "You always miss these crucial details, Evelyn. It's why I have to supervise everything." She turned to check her reflection in the French doors. "At least try not to embarrass us today. Stay in the background where you belong." The guests began arriving at 2, and suddenly my family transformed into different people. Eleanor became the gracious hostess, laughing melodiously at every joke, complimenting every dress. Marcus turned into the successful businessman, discussing deals and dropping names with practiced ease. Savannah floated between groups, the perfect socialite daughter, taking credit for the decorations she'd tried to ruin just hours earlier. And I became what I always was at these events. The invisible one. The one refilling drinks before they emptied, replacing appetizers before they ran low, fixing problems before anyone noticed they existed. I heard Eleanor telling Mrs. Whitman about how she'd personally overseen every detail of the party. I watched Marcus accept compliments on the photo timeline I'd created, claiming he'd been working on it for weeks. I listened to Savannah describe the flower arrangements as her vision brought to life. The party was in full swing by 4 o'clock. Richard's business partners were deep in discussion about market projections. Their wives clustered together discussing their latest charity functions. The younger crowd, mostly Marcus and Savannah's friends, had taken over the pool area, their laughter carrying across the yard. I was in the kitchen, preparing the next round of appetizers, when I heard Eleanor's voice rising above the general conversation. She was giving a speech, standing near the main table with a champagne glass raised high. I want to thank everyone for joining us today to celebrate not just Richard's company, but our family's journey together. This success wouldn't have been possible without the support of our amazing children. Marcus, our brilliant son, who's following in his father's footsteps, already making waves in the financial sector. Pause for applause. Marcus stood, waving modestly. And our beautiful Savannah, who chairs 3 charity committees and represents everything a Reed woman should be. More applause. Savannah curtsied playfully, earning laughs from the crowd. Eleanor continued talking about the company, about success, about family values. She thanked her personal trainer, her interior designer, even her hairdresser. She never mentioned my name. Not once. I stood in the kitchen doorway, invisible as always, holding a tray of canapés I'd spent 2 hours preparing. But then something shifted. Maybe it was the way the light hit her face, or maybe it was the champagne making her bold. But Eleanor's eyes found mine across the crowd. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone who'd found an opportunity for cruelty. Of course, in every family, there are those who contribute in their own small ways, she said, her voice carrying clearly. Even shadows serve a purpose. I suppose. They make the light seem brighter by comparison. A few people laughed uncertainly, not quite understanding. But I understood. Marcus understood too, and his laughter was genuine and cruel. Savannah tried to hide her smirk behind her champagne glass. Father looked at his shoes. I started to turn away, to retreat to the kitchen where I belonged. But Eleanor wasn't finished. Maybe she'd had more champagne than usual, or maybe she simply felt particularly vicious that day. But she decided to twist the knife deeper. Evelyn, dear, why don't you come here for a moment? The crowd parted as I walked forward, still carrying the tray like armor. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. I'd learned long ago not to show weakness in front of Eleanor. Everyone, this is our other daughter, Evelyn. She helps with the household duties. The way she said helps made it sound like I was the hired help. I was just telling Evelyn earlier that she needs to be more careful with details. The napkins, for instance, were completely wrong. Ivory instead of pearl. Can you imagine? Mrs. Whitman tittered. Oh, Eleanor, you're such a perfectionist. One has to be, Eleanor replied, her eyes never leaving mine. Though I suppose not everyone can meet high standards. Some people are just meant for simpler things. She turned to address me directly, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold. Evelyn, darling, we were actually discussing something earlier, weren't we? About your future? Why don't you share with everyone what I told you? I knew what was coming. This was Eleanor's favorite game, public humiliation disguised as conversation. I don't think this is the appropriate time, Mother. Nonsense. We're all family here. She gestured to the crowd, many of whom were looking increasingly uncomfortable. I was just explaining to Evelyn that she needs to be realistic about her place in the world. Not everyone can be a Marcus or a Savannah. Some people are just background. Isn't that right, dear? Mother, Savannah said, but she was smiling. You're being too harsh. Am I? Eleanor took another sip of champagne. I'm simply being honest. Evelyn, tell me, do you think anyone here would even notice if you disappeared tomorrow? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The entire party had gone quiet, everyone staring at us. Some looked horrified, others curious. A few seemed to be enjoying the drama. I saw Father start to step forward, then stop, his hand half raised as if to intervene, but lacking the courage to do so. Well? Eleanor pressed. It's a simple question. Do you think you matter enough to be missed? I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who had given birth to me but had never been a mother. This woman who had taken every opportunity to diminish me, to use me, to make me feel like nothing. And I realized that this moment, this public humiliation she'd orchestrated, was meant to be my breaking point. She wanted me to cry, to run, to give her and her friends something to gossip about for weeks. Instead, I set down the tray on the nearest table with deliberate calm. The sound of the silver platter hitting the wood was sharp in the silence. Then I smiled, not the submissive smile I'd perfected over the years, but something new, something dangerous. You're right, Mother, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the yard. I am just a shadow in this family. The shadow that keeps the lights on. The shadow that makes sure your perfect world doesn't crumble. The shadow you've stood on to make yourself seem taller. I picked up a champagne glass from the table. So to answer your question, I don't think you'd notice if I disappeared tomorrow. But you'd feel it. Oh, you'd feel it. I raised the glass as if making a toast, then let it drop. It shattered on the stone patio, the sound explosive in the quiet. Enjoy your party. I walked through the crowd, which parted like the Red Sea. I heard Eleanor calling after me, her voice shifting from mockery to anger. Evelyn! You get back here right now. This behavior is unacceptable, Marcus added his voice. Stop being so dramatic. Evelyn, it was just a joke. But I didn't stop. I walked straight through the house, past the kitchen where I'd spent the morning, past the dining room I'd decorated, past the family photos where I was always slightly out of focus or standing to the side. I grabbed my purse and my car keys and walked out the front door. The last thing I heard was Savannah's voice, high and pleased. Well, that was embarrassing. Should we call someone? She seems unstable. My hands were shaking as I got in my car, but not from sadness or fear. It was anger, pure and crystalline, burning through years of accumulated hurt. I didn't drive home. Instead, I went straight to Chloe's apartment. Chloe Davis had been my friend since college, the only person who'd ever seen through my family's facade. She was a corporate lawyer now, sharp as a blade and twice as dangerous when she needed to be. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. Tell me everything, she said, pouring 2 glasses of wine despite it being afternoon. I told her about the party, about Eleanor's speech, about the public humiliation. But more than that, I told her about the years leading up to it. The birthday parties where I wasn't allowed to invite friends because it would complicate things. The family vacations where I was brought along to watch their luggage and make restaurant reservations. The college graduation they'd missed because Marcus had a minor business presentation the same day. The countless times I'd covered for their mistakes, cleaned up their messes, sacrificed my own dreams to maintain their perfect image. Chloe listened, her expression growing darker with every word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "So what are you going to do about it?" "I want to disappear," I said. Just like she said, I want to vanish completely and see how long it takes them to realize what they've lost. Chloe leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. Then let's make you disappear. We worked through the night. Chloe had connections, legal ways to make someone effectively vanish from their old life. We started with the basics: new phone number, untraceable. All social media accounts deleted, not just deactivated but completely wiped. Email addresses canceled. We even found a way to legally change my professional name for work purposes to Eve Raine, close enough to my real name that it wouldn't cause legal issues, but different enough that casual searches wouldn't find me. Your family doesn't know about your savings account, do they? Chloe asked around 3 in the morning, both of us surrounded by paperwork and empty coffee cups. No, I said. I opened it years ago. I've been saving everything I could, planning for. I don't know what I was planning for. Maybe this. How much? About 40,000. Chloe whistled. That's enough to start over. More than enough if you're smart about it. We found an apartment in Seattle, a furnished studio that I could rent month to month while I figured out my next steps. It was small but clean, in a building with good security, and no questions asked about previous rental history. Chloe called in a favor with a friend who ran a property management company. You'll need income, she said. What are your skills? And don't say party planning and keeping your family functional. I have a business degree, I said. Eleanor insisted all her children have respectable educations, even the shadows. And I've basically been running a small corporation single-handedly for years. Budgets, scheduling, negotiation, crisis management. Virtual assistant work, Chloe said immediately. You can do it from anywhere. The demand is huge. And with your skills, you could charge premium rates. I know a few entrepreneurs who are always looking for someone reliable. By dawn, I had a new life mapped out. Bank accounts that my family couldn't access. A P.O. box for any necessary mail. A laptop purchased with cash. Even a different hairstyle planned, changing from the long blonde waves Eleanor had always insisted on to something shorter, darker, more me. What about your stuff? Chloe asked. You need clothes, personal items. Nothing in that house is really mine anyway, I said. It's all what they wanted me to have, what they thought I should wear, what fit their image. Let them keep it. I went back to the house that morning, knowing everyone would still be sleeping off the party. The caterers had cleaned up, of course. I'd arranged that in advance, though I'm sure Eleanor would claim she'd handled it. The house was quiet, pristine, like the chaos of yesterday had never happened. I packed one suitcase, just essentials and a few pieces of jewelry my grandmother had left me, the only things in that house that truly belonged to me. I left my house key on the kitchen counter with a note that said simply, "You were right. I don't matter. So I'm not here anymore." Then I added one more line, "Try not to notice." The drive to Seattle took 3 hours. I spent it in silence. No radio, no music, just the sound of the road and my own heartbeat. I kept expecting to feel regret, sadness, something. Instead, I felt like I was breathing properly for the first time in years. The apartment was on the 15th floor with a view of the Sound. It was maybe 400 square feet total, smaller than my bedroom at the Reed house. But standing in it, I felt like I was in a palace. Every inch of it was mine. Every decision about how to arrange the furniture, what to eat, when to sleep, all mine. I spent the first week just existing in the silence. No one demanding anything, no one criticizing my choices, no one needing me to fix their problems. I'd turned off my old phone before leaving, but I'd kept it, curious to see what would happen. When I turned it on briefly a week later, there were dozens of messages. The first few were angry. Eleanor's voice was sharp, demanding I stop being childish and come home immediately. Marcus sent texts calling me dramatic and attention-seeking. Savannah left a voicemail saying I was embarrassing the family and needed to stop this tantrum. But as the days had passed, the tone had changed. Eleanor's messages became less angry and more irritated. This is very inconvenient. Evelyn, we have the charity gala next week and nothing has been arranged. Marcus, I missed my meeting with the Japanese investors because you didn't send me the reminder. This is really unprofessional. Savannah. Mother is impossible right now. She can't find anything, and she's taking it out on everyone else. Just come back and we'll forget this happened. There was only one message from my father, sent on day 6. I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserved better. I deleted them all and turned the phone off permanently. Chloe had been right about the virtual assistant work. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 clients, all successful women who needed someone competent and discreet to manage their professional lives. The work was similar to what I'd done for my family, but with one crucial difference. These women appreciated time equals zero point 0.4 seconds. They paid me well, thanked me regularly, and treated me like a valuable professional rather than invisible help. One of my clients, Miranda Chen, was a tech entrepreneur who'd built a successful app development company. We worked together so well that she offered me additional responsibilities, including project management for her new venture. You have a gift for seeing the big picture while managing the details, she told me during a video call. That's rare. The money was good, better than good. Within a month, I was making more than I'd ever dreamed possible. I moved out of the studio into a 1-bedroom apartment in a better building. I bought furniture that I chose, art that I liked, clothes that made me feel like myself rather than a supporting character in someone else's story. But the real change was in how I felt. Every morning, I woke up without dread. I ate breakfast without criticism. I worked without being belittled. I existed without apology. It was intoxicating. Meanwhile, back in San Francisco, the Reed family was falling apart. Chloe kept tabs through mutual acquaintances and social media, feeding me updates I hadn't asked for but secretly craved. Marcus had lost a major client because he'd missed 3 meetings in a row. Without me managing his calendar and sending him constant reminders, he couldn't keep track of his own life. His assistant quit after 2 weeks of him screaming at her for not being able to do simple things like Evelyn used to do. Savannah's charity gala had been a disaster. She'd tried to plan it herself, but without my contacts, my attention to detail, and my ability to negotiate with vendors, it had turned into an embarrassing, overpriced mess. The charity board had removed her as chair, a humiliation that had apparently sent her into what her friends called a spiral. Eleanor was the most affected. Without me handling the household, managing the staff, paying the bills on time, and keeping track of her social obligations, her perfectly ordered world had crumbled. The housekeeper quit because Eleanor had screamed at her one too many times. The gardener stopped coming because the payments were late. She'd missed her own anniversary dinner because no one had reminded her about it. But the real blow came when Richard filed for separation. Chloe called me with that news, barely able to contain her glee. Apparently, your disappearance made him realize something. That Eleanor had been the source of the family's toxicity all along. He told her that watching how she treated you, and how he'd allowed it, made him sick. He moved into a hotel last week. I should have felt vindicated, maybe a little happy. Instead, I felt nothing. They were strangers to me now. People from a past life that no longer affected my present. 3 months into my new life, I incorporated my virtual assistant business into a proper company, Eve Raine Enterprises. I hired 2 other assistants to help with the growing client base. Miranda became my business partner, investing in a new venture we were developing, a comprehensive lifestyle management app for professional women. 6 months in, I was featured in a Seattle Business Journal as one of the 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch. The article used my professional name and a photo where I looked nothing like the old Evelyn. Shorter, darker hair, designer glasses I'd never have been allowed to wear before, a confident smile instead of the placating expression I'd worn like armor for years. The Reeds had hired a private investigator by then, according to Chloe's sources. But Eve Raine had no connection to Evelyn Reed that any investigator could find. Different city, different name, different appearance, different life. I was a ghost, just like Eleanor had always said I was. The difference was, now I was a ghost by choice. 1 year after the barbecue, almost to the day, I received an unexpected email. It had been sent to my company's general inquiry address, but something about it made my assistant forward it to me personally. Dear Miss Raine, I am reaching out on behalf of the Reed family of San Francisco. They are seeking to reconnect with their daughter and have authorized me to extend an invitation to Richard Reed's 60th birthday celebration. The family has expressed deep regret for past actions and a sincere desire for reconciliation. While I understand this may be unexpected, they wanted to ensure you receive this invitation through any means possible. Attached was a formal invitation to a celebration at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco, one of the city's most exclusive venues. At the bottom, in handwriting I recognized as my father's, was a note. Please come home. We need you. I need you. Dad. I stared at that invitation for a long time. The old Evelyn would have gone running back, desperate for the scrap of affection it represented. But I wasn't her anymore. I was Eve Raine, CEO of a successful company, partner in a tech venture, a woman who'd built an empire from the ashes of their cruelty. What do you think? I asked Chloe over drinks that night, showing her the invitation. I think they're desperate, she said. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I thought about it for days, ignored it, came back to it, made my decision, changed my mind, made it again. In the end, it wasn't the invitation that decided me. It was a news item Chloe found online, a society page piece about how the Reeds were struggling financially. Richard's company had lost several major clients. The house was on the market. Eleanor was selling her jewelry. Marcus was being investigated by the SEC for some irregular trades. Savannah had married a man 30 years older than her, apparently for financial security. They weren't just desperate for reconciliation. They were desperate, period. And they thought I'd come running back to save them, the way I always had. The night of the birthday party, I stood outside the St. Francis Hotel in a dress that cost more than Eleanor used to spend in a month. It was black, perfectly tailored, elegant in its simplicity. My jewelry was minimal but expensive, real diamonds that caught the light with every movement. My hair was still shorter and darker, styled in a way that suggested power rather than ornamentation. I looked like what I was, a successful woman who didn't need anyone's approval. Chloe stood beside me in an equally impressive outfit. Ready for this? I've been ready for a year, I said. We walked into the ballroom like we owned it. The party was clearly meant to be impressive, but I could see the cracks. Fewer guests than there should have been. Cheaper flowers. A cash bar instead of open. The kinds of compromises the Reeds would have died before making a year ago. I saw them before they saw me. Eleanor looked older, harder, her designer dress from last season. Marcus had gained weight, his suit slightly too tight, his face red from too much drinking. Savannah stood beside her elderly husband, her smile forced, her eyes dull. And Richard looked tired, defeated, like a man who'd realized too late what he'd lost. It was Eleanor who noticed me first. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. She started toward me, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out how to play this, whether to be angry or welcoming, whether to pretend nothing had happened or to make a scene. I didn't give her the chance to decide. I walked past her like she was invisible, the same way she'd treated me for years. The look of shock on her face was worth everything. I went straight to the bar, ordered champagne, the good stuff that they weren't serving, but that the bartender found for me when I slipped him 100. People were staring, whispering. Word spread quickly through the party. The lost daughter had returned, but she wasn't what anyone expected. Marcus approached next, his swagger forced. Evelyn? Jesus. What happened to you? You look different. The name is Eve, I said coolly. And you look exactly the same. Marcus. How unfortunate for you. He flushed red. Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but Mom and Dad need— I'm not playing any games, I interrupted. I'm here for Father's birthday. Nothing more. Savannah tried next, gliding over with her elderly husband in tow. Evelyn, darling, we've been so worried. Where have you been? And what have you done to your hair? I looked at her steadily. I've been living my life. Successfully. And the hair? I decided I preferred it this way. Change can be refreshing when it's your choice. Her husband was staring at me with interest. I don't believe we've been introduced. Harold Pemberton. Eve Raine, I said, shaking his hand. CEO of Eve Raine Enterprises. His eyebrows shot up. The Eve Raine? The one featured in Business Week last month? Savannah's face went pale. That was you? I smiled. Surprised? You shouldn't be. I've always been good at managing things. I just decided to start managing them for people who actually appreciated it. The confrontation with Eleanor came during Richard's birthday toast. She'd had too much wine. I could tell by the way she held her glass. And she was angry that I hadn't come crawling back begging for forgiveness. When Richard stood to thank everyone for coming, Eleanor grabbed the microphone. Before my husband speaks, she said, her words slightly slurred, I want to address the elephant in the room. Our daughter Evelyn, who abandoned this family in our time of need, has graced us with her presence tonight. She turned to look at me directly. Tell me, Evelyn, was it worth it? Running away like a child? Destroying our family? The room went silent. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The public confrontation she thought would break me the way her last one had. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I stood, walking slowly to the front of the room. When I reached Eleanor, I gently took the microphone from her hand. She was too shocked to resist. Good evening, everyone, I said, my voice clear and strong. For those who don't know me, I'm the Reed's former daughter, Evelyn. Though these days, I go by Eve Raine. Mother asked if it was worth it, leaving. Let me answer that question. I looked around the room, making eye contact with the people I recognized, the ones who'd witnessed my humiliation a year ago. A year ago, at another Reed family party, my mother asked me a question. She asked if anyone would notice if I disappeared. The answer, it turns out, was yes. They noticed. They noticed when their bills didn't get paid. They noticed when their schedules fell apart. They noticed when their perfect world, built on my invisible labor, crumbled. Eleanor tried to speak, but I continued over her. But here's what I noticed when I disappeared. I noticed that I was brilliant at business. I noticed that I could build something from nothing. I noticed that respect and appreciation weren't impossible things to find, just impossible to find here. I built a company that's worth more than what's left of the Reed family fortune. I created jobs, opportunities, success. All things I could never have done while I was busy being the shadow my mother insisted I was. I turned to Richard then. Happy birthday, Father. My gift to you is the truth. This family is broken not because I left, but because of how you all treated me when I was here. Every cruel word, every dismissal, every moment you stood by and watched it happen. Time equals 0.3 seconds. That's what destroyed us. Not my leaving. That was just the consequence. I set the microphone down and looked at Eleanor one last time. You asked if anyone would notice if I disappeared. The answer is yes. Mother, you noticed. You're still noticing. And you'll keep noticing for the rest of your life. The silence in the room was deafening. I could see Richard's face crumpling, tears in his eyes. Marcus was red with rage and humiliation. Savannah was clutching her husband's arm like a lifeline. And Eleanor looked like I'd slapped her. But I wasn't done. Not quite. Oh, and one more thing, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear without the microphone. I know about the SEC investigation. Marcus. I know about the fraudulent trades you made using information you stole from Father's files. Information you accessed using the passwords I used to manage for you. Don't worry. I've already provided the investigators with proof that I hadn't had access to those systems for over a year, but you might want to get a better lawyer. Marcus went white. You couldn't. I could and I did. Consider it a birthday gift to father. The truth about what kind of son you really are. I walked back through the crowd then, Chloe beside me, heading for the exit. Behind us, the room exploded into chaos. I could hear Eleanor screaming at Marcus, Richard's voice rising in anger, Savannah's shrill denials about knowing anything. At the door, I turned back one last time. The perfect Reed family was destroying itself in front of San Francisco's elite, all their secrets spilling out like blood from a wound. It was perfect. It was justice. It was over. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Chloe linked her arm through mine. How do you feel? Free, I said. And for the first time in my entire life, I meant time equals zero point 0.4 seconds. The epilogue to this story isn't about them. It's about me. Eve Raine Enterprises went public 2 years later, making me a multi-millionaire before my 30th birthday. I bought a house overlooking the Sound, married a man who'd never met Evelyn Reed and loved Eve Raine, had 2 children who will never know what it's like to be invisible in their own home. I heard through the grapevine that Richard divorced Eleanor, that Marcus went to prison for insider trading, that Savannah's husband left her when the money ran out. Eleanor lives in a small apartment now, working as a receptionist for a woman half her age. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about that barbecue, about asking if anyone would notice if I disappeared. I wonder if she realizes that the answer was never about whether people would notice. It was about whether I would finally notice my own worth. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. Shadows, after all, only exist when there's something blocking the light. And I am my own light now, burning bright and casting no shadows at all.